So keep that burning in your mind for a little while, because we have on the line a caller from last week, Matt Slick from carm.org. You there, Matt?
Yeah, I'm here. How are you?
How you doing? I'm Matt. We spoke by email, and Tracy Harris is with me as well.
Hi, Tracy.
I wanted to I don't know, get a couple things out of the way, kind of clearing up for last week. And some of this is directed to you, and some of it's directed to the people that watch the show. I don't know how familiar you are with the show. In addition to the fact that we broadcast to Austin on public access television, we also stream the show live over the internet, and then the shows are uploaded. So some people see things a week later, a year later, 5 years later. The show's been on for 11 years, so some people are behind the curve, and I don't have any other method of correcting things. Some of the things that happened last week, first of all, there was some confusion about terms. I tried to call in and did get through, but during the conversation I could not get through to talk to you, and I just decided I'd hold it off till this week. And I think, as objectively as I can, I don't want to apply blame for confusion of terms. I'd just like to say that for some of what you said, I was at least in complete agreement within the context of what you're talking about. And I wanted to see if this week, and I have actually the printout, for those people who are interested, the website is carm.org, that's CARM.org. And if you click on, I think the easiest way to navigate to this actual transcendent argument for the existence of God is there's a link there for secular movements, and then one for atheism, and then you'll probably find a link for is atheism viable, and then there's a link from there. I don't know, Matt, is there a shorter way to get there?
Oh, that sounds pretty good.
All right. And first of all, obviously I can't speak for the gentlemen who were here last week. We've had lots of conversations about this and plenty of email feedback with people taking all kinds of different takes on what happened. And I'm just going to, for the sake of this, set most of that aside. I wanted to start by saying that when I went to the site and read the argument, and I've read tag before in different formats, whatever else, I like what you did with it in the sense that this is something that the foundations of tag are something that I would almost say are self-evident, and it confuses me when people have a difficulty grasping this. But the argument itself and the construct that you're going through is not something that is necessarily approachable or accessible to everybody. And I think you did a good job of making it as approachable as it can be. So,
wow, I want to say thanks for that, because I agree exactly with what you're saying. It does take a bit of, I don't know, mental ability to kind of get through some of the arguments. That's the strength of it, but it's also the weakness of it, I think, that some people can't really grasp some of the principles in there. I don't think it's condescending, but it's just
No, I agree. It's probably one of the reasons why this, it may be one of the reasons why this isn't as popular. I will say, though, that, and I've got the printout in front of me, if you want to follow along so that we can, get to the meat, because I think there's a few spots where I've identified, at least as far as I'm concerned, clear problems. And some of these, to be fair, you list objections there with your responses. Some of the objections I'm going to launch are similar to, or perhaps contextually identical to some objections you've received. And in that case, I'm not necessarily sure that I buy the response that you gave. Some of these I did not see at the website as well. But starting with number one, and part of the way, by the way, part of the confusion from last week, and this is for the viewers and for you as well. When you started talking, in your written version, you're very clear. You logical absolutes, logical absolutes, logical absolutes, so that the person who's reading this knows that you're not talking about just logic, as in the model that we use, the application of these absolutes. You're talking about the absolutes themselves, and we're talking about classical logic as well, Aristotelian syllogistic logic. Although I'd argue that all the other versions are still dependent upon this. I mean, we're talking about something that's absolute in that sense.
Matt, I'm surprised again. Well said.
I told you I'm in agreement here. Here's the thing. So we're going to go ahead with number one. There's the law of identity, the law of non-contradiction, and the law of the middle. Okay, fine. I got no objection to those. Number 2, logical absolutes are truth statements, such as that which exists has attributes and nature. And yeah, I would not only agree with that, but I'd say that these absolutes only apply to statements that are truth statements. If there's something that is inherent, except in a meta sense, and I don't want to confuse everybody, but I'll get to that in a second. If there's a statement like, this statement is false, which is internally contradictory, these absolutes don't say that any statement you could make is necessarily true or false. These absolutes say that any statement you could make have the characteristics of whatever that statement is and not the characteristics of whatever that statement isn't. Do you follow?
Let me jump in. I'm with you. The statement, this statement is false, does not fall into the category of excluded middle, but under the category of non-contradiction because it's a self-refuting statement.
Yeah. I'm with you there, too.
Okay.
So then we get to logical absolutes or transcendent. Actually, I'm for the purposes of this, number 3 is logical absolutes form the basis of rational discourse. That's where I was agreeing with you before as well, that without these absolutes, you really can't make truth statements, and anything could be contradictory. You have no way of discerning what is or isn't.
That's correct.
Okay. So number 4, logical absolutes are transcendent. This is the one where you kind of got an objection, although I think that the discussion was referencing 2 different things. And also, I think that a lot of, I don't want to say atheists, that's not actually correct. Secularists have a knee-jerk reaction to the word transcendent, and it's justified in the sense that how transcendent is used colloquially is something that we would obviously launch an objection to. But that's not the usage you're talking about here. Really, your usage is, it might be better just to say non-contingent. It's not contingent upon space, time, matter, or thought.
Yes. As far as logical absolutes not be contingent upon thought, the nature of logical absolutes is that there are conceptual. Thought is conceptual.
Well, so you're getting ahead of me. You're getting ahead of me. And actually, to be fair, I did move ahead, so go ahead.
So I wouldn't necessarily agree with the last premise there in that they're not of thought or things like that, but they're not contingent upon physical existence.
Yeah.
And the reason we know that is because of the property material. You probably get into that. I'll let you read through it, the property function. But go ahead.
So we've reached essentially the first part where I think there's a problem, and that is in number 4 on number 3. 4 sub 3, you say logical absolutes are not dependent on people. That is, they are not the product of human thinking. My response to that is, I agree. They are not the product of human thinking, and we're talking about the absolutes here. I would just extend that to say that there's no reason to think they're the product of any thinking. And the only reason I can see that you wouldn't simply put that there is because in a minute you're going to turn around and argue that they are a product of thinking.
I'm not sure how to answer that. Because, if I can get this out, to say that the product of thinking, since they are conceptual by nature, it's like saying they have to exist if someone thinks them. But then is the thinking the process that bring the result of a logical absolute? Well, then you'd fall back under the category of them being formed by someone's thinking. That wouldn't work.
I think that's partly why I'm objecting to, well, we're not quite to number 6 yet, but we are because we're meshing this together a little bit. We'll set aside this disagreement on number 4 for a minute just for clarity. 5 will just grant that they're not dependent on the material world and move on to 6, where you're saying logical absolutes are conceptual by nature. And I'd argue that you're using the wrong word there. Just for the sake of clarity, that instead of conceptual, which implies this problem you were just talking about, that that it is some product of thought, that the correct word to use there is actually abstract. That logical absolutes are abstract by nature.
We have defined abstraction, and abstraction requires mental processes.
Yeah. It requires mental processes in the sense. Wow, there may not be a good word for this.
Let me jump in a little bit and help you out because I've wrestled with just that right where you're at.
Well, there is a flaw. There is a flaw, a logical flaw in 6.1, and that's easy to demonstrate. Irrespective.
Are you saying that logic is not okay? Because logic is a process of the mind, is what 6A says. Excuse me. And you're saying logic is not a process of the mind?
No. This is the fallacy. This is the fallacy I'm talking about. All the way up to this point, you say logical absolutes, logical absolutes, logical absolutes, and then you say logic is a process of the mind. What you're doing in 6.1 is making an inductive argument. You're saying logic is a process of the mind, and that I would agree as long as we're talking about logic in the sense of the models that we do, the application of these absolutes. And you're saying logical absolutes provide the framework for logic, which I agree with. But then you say, therefore, logical absolutes are conceptual by nature. That is a logical fallacy. To say that the application of X is conceptual, therefore X is conceptual, is a logical fallacy.
Okay. So then let me ask you, are you saying then that a logical absolute, such as the law of excluded middle, is not a conceptual reality?
I'm saying that that may not make sense. That it depends on what your definition of conceptual is, that's what we're having the struggle with.
Of the mind.
I would say that absolute is not contingent on any mind and could not be. And when you get to your conclusion, where you get to that logical absolutes are contingent upon the mind of God, that this is actually self-refuting.
No, I would disagree, of course.
Okay, can God make A not A?
No.
Why not?
Because it would be a logical contradiction. In God's
which means God is subject to the laws of logic, these absolutes. Therefore, he cannot be the author of them.
Okay. Last week when I was talking, each time I would start to give an answer, the hosts would jump in and not let me finish. I actually received numerous emails from atheists who pointed out that very issue. I'm not trying to be whiny and complaining, but it really does help when asked a question if I can actually complete the thought. I mean, I'm not trying to be complaining here, but
I think I've been pretty fair today, and I'm stopping so that you can do that.
I appreciate that. Now, I like the way that you present yourself, because I can tell you're articulate and intelligent, so I like that. But now I forgot where I was, actually, but God did not author the logical absolutes. They are, what we would say, we're jumping way ahead, but what we would say is they are part of his nature and his essence. God cannot make A be non-A any more than God can lie or God can stop being God, because God has a certain nature, and he must operate in a manner consistent with his own nature.
Right.
This is the Christian worldview.
I understand that.
So since certain things are just impossible, like a square circle, God cannot make a square circle because it's a logically impossible thing.
Right. And the problem here is that what you're saying is that these absolutes exist. And this is the problem with actually the whole argument. Calling this the transcendental argument for the existence of God is to me problematic, because what it really is an argument for why are there logical absolutes. So you construct an argument, and by the way, I understand you didn't construct this, although this version is yours. Tag's been around. An argument is constructed to explain why the logical absolutes are what they are. And in doing so, there are possibilities. And you are excluding the possibility that they simply are what they are, that it is their very nature, that there could be no other way. And then when you get to your conclusion to say they are God, you're either equating God to logical absolutes, which means you're just affirming that logical absolutes exist and are what they are by nature and labeling those absolutes God, or you are claiming that God and logical absolutes are somehow synonymous but not the same. And if that's the case, you've made no argument for the existence of God. You've simply argued for the existence of these absolutes. And to say that it's just a part of God's nature is fundamentally no different from saying that those absolutes are what they are because that's their nature. They couldn't be another way.
All right. Well, let's back up then. Let's go through the argument.
Okay.
See, logic does exist. We use it. It's based upon logical principles. We already went over those, the first, second, third laws of logic. The nature of these logical laws are that they are transcendent. They are not dependent upon space and time for their validity. They are conceptual in the sense that they exist in the mind. You cannot go out to a field and dig in a bunch of dirt and find the logical absolute called the law of identity. You cannot freeze them, weigh them, measure their length or the color. It doesn't work like that.
Can I pause here for a second? Because I think this is where the first equivocation comes in.
It's your show.
Well, I just want to make, if you were right on the verge of getting to something important, I didn't want to stop you unnecessarily. What you're talking about there, this conceptual thing, by the way, I still assert that there's an actual logical fallacy, an inductive argument error in there. But when you're saying that they exist in the mind, no, they don't. That's almost metaphorical. If no minds existed, these things would still be true. These absolutes go to the essence of what is, and I guess we could say what is possible. They are the essence of everything. And whether or not there's a mind, they still are what they are. And that is, I mean, they apply to themselves. They apply to reality. They apply to mind. They apply to everything.
Actually,
and you've said they even apply to God.
Okay, hold on. Too many things. First of all, you said they are what they are. That's fine. Saying that the absolutes are God, I did not say that, nor was implying that. You said, or that God and the logical absolutes are synonymous, not the same. Well, we could ferret that one out. But you said if no mind exists, and they would still be true. Well, that's not a logical statement, because truth is a mental statement. Truth is truth is a statement. Now, if no mind exists, there can be no truth. There can only be reality and actuality.
This is where you have essentially palmed a card in the argument, because the logical absolutes that you're talking about are operating at a meta level. And then when you say they're conceptual, you're applying them. You're actually using...
I'm saying they're conceptual by nature. The statement, for example, the law of identity, something is what it is a statement, and it's a truth. Truth exists only when minds exist. Truth only exists when minds exist. Statements are of the mind.
So what you're saying is that let's just say, and I realize that this is going to be contradictory. Hopefully you'll be able to go along with it. Let's just say that there is no mind anywhere. The universe is exactly identical, except that there are no minds. Okay?
Then there is no truth.
But that's not what the logical absolutes are about. They're not about truth. They're about essence. A rock in that universe is still a rock, and it is not a rock. It doesn't matter if there's somebody who can assess the truth, put a valuation on the truth. Those absolutes go to the essence and not the evaluation of it.
On the contrary, logic reflects reality. This is why we're able to do mathematics. This is why we're able to make conclusions that work in the real world. The meta-analysis you're trying to get to is an attempt to distinguish the ontological nature of them from the truth statements of what they are, separate them, which I think is a category mistake on your part, and then say there is no real reality relationship. And obviously that cannot be the case because we exist in reality. We use them all the time.
You're the one.
Logical absolutes are statements, and they do relate to truth because it is true that a statement cannot be both true and false at the same time, because the nature of the second law of logic states a statement cannot be both true and false at the same time. The very nature of the statement of law of logic there deals with the nature of truth, and which contradicts what you said earlier.
No, it doesn't. Here's the thing.
Yes, it does.
Well, okay, then I guess you're right if your only response is to interrupt and say, yes, it does. Is that how that works?
Well, it's not my only response. I gave you a good one.
Well, you didn't let me get to respond to this. You're talking about two different things. The statement, X equals S. Yes, that statement does not exist if there are no minds to make that statement. Its truth value is meaningless and pointless if there aren't any minds to assess it. And yet, that's not what these absolutes are. These absolutes are not the statement within the mind. The statements point to the absolutes. A rock in a universe with no minds is still whatever it is, and it is not whatever it is not. That's the absolute. The statement is not the absolute. And when you say that these logical absolutes are transcendent, that they are not dependent upon matter, that they are not dependent on anything in the universe, and then turn around and say that they are conceptual and that they are our reflections of reality, you are contradicting yourself.
Actually, sorry, Matt, I love this conversation, but you're the one offering a self-contradictory statement. When you say the only thing that exists is a rock, and a rock is a rock, what you're offering is the self-contradictory statement. The only thing that exists is a rock, and then what you do is violate that and offer a truth statement, which violates.
No, I never said the only thing that exists is a rock. I said in a universe that is identical to this, but in which there are no minds, a rock is still what it is. I did not say the only thing that exists is a rock.
If there are no minds and a rock is in existence, and you make the statement that it is true as it is, you are making a truth statement.
I am making a true statement. I am making a true statement in this universe where minds exist. In the other universe where no minds exist, no truth statement could be made, but the rock is still a rock, and it's still not a rock.
Then what you're doing is affirming that the law of identity is still true, whether or not you're there to know it or not.
Exactly. That's what we mean by absolute and non-contingent.
So then you have a non-contingent, conceptual absolute, not dependent upon a mind.
Not conceptual. That's the
How can a statement not be conceptual?
The statement is occurring in this universe. There would be no statement in the other universe, but the essence would be the same.
How can a statement exist without a mind? It cannot.
Because the logical absolutes are essential and not conceptual.
Okay. What you're doing is saying that the nature of logic itself is concomitant with the existence of physical properties.
No, because because they apply even if there is nothing. Nothing.
The application is of the mind.
I agree. The application of this is of the mind. The application of these.
Why do you keep using conceptual applications to verify a non-conceptual situation?
Because you have to talk about it.
Exactly. You cannot do it without mind.
That
Truth doesn't exist without a mind. The logical absolutes, by necessity, require a mind.
This is the contradiction in your thing. You're saying that X is conceptual, therefore the thing that X is based upon is conceptual.
No,
that's a fallacy. That's a fallacy.
No.
That's like saying my lust is emotional, therefore the object of my lust is also emotional. It's a category fallacy.
No, that's called a fallacy of division. Look, the nature of the logical absolutes. Logic is a process of proper inference. The proper inference occurs in the mind. Logic is a process of the mind.
Agreed.
The logical basis of logic itself is on basic conceptual laws. They are statements that we codify. All you do is when you say, hey, look, we are the ones codifying what already exists, you're not saying anything other than they are either the property of the universe, which can't be, or we are inventing them by codifying them. And you're saying then that what they really are dependent upon human minds for their existence.
No. What I'm saying, I agreed with almost everything right up to the end, except that what you've done is you've talked about two different things. You've talked about logic, and that is the process that we go through, the thinking, the model that we build in our mind that reflects reality. That is necessarily conceptual. But these logical absolutes that we talked about, they're not logic, and they are the foundations upon which logic is built. They are true. They are. Hang on. They are true, and they are true. And you went to universe, and you went to reality. They are true, irrespective. I can't believe I almost said irregardless. That was a good one. You got me so flustered. You're using letting me use non-words. They are true, irrespective of the subject. They are essentially true. Reality is reality, and it's not reality. It applies to every reality. It applies to anything you could think of, including things that don't exist. Now, the application of this is conceptual. That I grant. But the concept is pointing to something physical. It's like saying I have a concept of an apple, and it's not the same as the apple, and the apple is not a concept. But there is a physical apple that I'm pointing to. That's not a perfect analogy because we're pointing to something physical. Our logical thought processes, the application of these absolutes, and in some cases, we use other things because, like modal logic deals with possibility inferences towards necessity. But that's our attempt to understand the universe in which we live. And there is a presumption that it operates under certain rules, and that there is consistency throughout this. Those are all things that we do perhaps in the scientific investigation. But
It's called begging the question.
but at the core, these three absolutes of classical logic that were sorted out at the time of Aristotle, they address, for example, in a syllogism, they address the validity of the structure. They are content agnostic. A equals A does not equal not A, and it's not neither or both at the same time. This addresses essence. It is the only sense that this is conceptual is that you have a concept of this, but the this in that sentence is not in itself conceptual. Otherwise, you have the situation where A equals A or A does not equal not A is based on somebody's thought. It becomes contingent upon thought, which is exactly what you want to do. You want to get to the point where you can say that since we're not perfect, it must be contingent on a perfect mind since they're absolutes. Well, guess what? Well, first of all, you can't get there because that's not it. You've changed the scope of what we're talking about. We're talking about the absolutes. But also, when you get to the point where you say that I'm going to label it God, well, congratulations. You've labeled this non-contingent absolute that we both almost, I thought, agreed exists. You've just labeled it God.
Well, you said a lot. There's a lot to comment on here.
No.
But let me ask you this.
Okay.
Tell me what the essence, the very nature, the ontos of these logical absolute laws, what are they by nature?
I don't know, but I do know that they are what they are, and they are not what they are not.
So you don't know what they are.
That's correct.
But you're telling me what they're not.
No. I'm saying that they
Are they
are.
conceptual?
I'm saying that they are what they are, and they are not what they are not.
Yeah, well, that's called begging the question. You're saying it is what it is because it is what it is. That's just citing the law of identity.
Right.
If you don't know what they are, how can you tell me that they're not?
I can tell you what they are not, and here's why.
Tell me what they're not.
Because are is one thing, and are not is everything that isn't that one thing. And so if I had to identify anything in this pool, that doesn't mean that I've eliminated this entire pool.
Can you tell me what the logical absolutes are not?
I'm not talking about them in the physical sense of an essence.
So they're not physical? I
have no idea. Well, all right.
If you're going to tell me
are
that
asserting,
I'm wrong, you need to be able to identify what they are. If you can properly tell me what it's not.
No. I do not. No, I do not need. Okay, then you need to be able to identify what God is before you can tell me that He is.
Okay.
And you got to prove this. You can't just assert it.
No, you said. How do I prove? This is the proof.
I'm saying we're talking in one context, and I'm afraid there's a limit to how long I can let this go on before we start losing callers and viewers. And maybe we can take it offline, discuss it in email, and get back to it again on another call. But what I'm saying is, you're saying that that these laws are transcendent, not contingent, although you leave one mind as an exclusion to that, and absolute. And I'm saying, and then you go on to say that they're conceptual in nature because we think about them. And I'm saying that argument is logically flawed.
I'm not saying they're conceptual in nature because we think about
That's
them.
exactly what you said.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we are able to think about them, and because we can recognize them doesn't mean that they are of our minds. It means that we recognize them. It's the same as I recognize them in my backyard. Well, what is it?
So what are you recognizing?
Acceptance.
So what are you recognizing? Because if you say, I can recognize an apple, hang on, because if you say, I can recognize an apple, and therefore the apple is conceptual, that is exactly what you're saying in this point, and that's the fallacy I'm pointing out.
Okay. You're citing the law of identity. Look, I'm a theologian, and if someone were to come to me and say the Trinity is one God in three modes or forms, I'd say, no, that is not right. The reason it's not right is because it violates what the true definition of it really is. This is what it really is. I'm able to recognize what is wrong because I know what it really and truthfully is.
How do you know? How do you know?
Because I know from the Scriptures what it is. That's a whole other topic. If you want me to come back on and discuss the Trinity, I will. But here's the thing. The principle is this. And if you were to tell me that I'm wrong about deciding what they are, defining what they are, and you can't even tell me what they really are, then you have no logical business of telling me that I'm wrong.
That, sir, is a complete fallacy. I identified a logical fallacy in your argument, My inability to tell you exactly what they are does not mean that I can't identify one of the things they're not. But that is all irrelevant to the point that you have built this on a logical fallacy. You have said that logic, our thought process, is conceptual, and therefore the absolutes upon which it is founded are also conceptual. And that is fundamentally the same as saying I have a concept of an apple, and therefore the apple is also conceptual. That is flawed. The argument is flawed.
It's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that
I'm sorry that you don't see it that way, but the structure is the same.
Well, I can say the same thing about you, Matt, respectfully. I'm sorry you don't see it that way. But the fact is, you don't have a standard by which you can judge whether these logical absolutes are or are not conceptual. I'm asking you for a list. Tell me what they are not. I will write them down here on my computer as we're talking.
You're asking me to prove that a God doesn't exist, essentially.
No, I'm not.
And I don't. Yes, you are, essentially.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are. Let me finish.
No, I'm not. I'm asking you to tell me.
I'm going to hang up on you in a second, Matt, if you don't let me finish this. I'm making an analogy here. I'm sorry that your brain missed it. You are essentially asking me to prove that a God doesn't exist and claiming that a God does exist in your mind until I actually demonstrate that he doesn't. That's what you're doing, the same thing with these logical absolutes, because you're saying, and you just said a second ago, that if I can't tell you what they aren't, I can't tell you what they are.
No, I do not believe in putting an atheist on the spot and saying, prove God does not exist.
Then stop doing it.
I don't do that, and that's not what I'm doing. I tell Christians to stop doing it.
You just did it with regard, not God, with regard to the logical absolutes.
No, you said, because these things are not conceptual by nature. Okay, great. Then what are they? And you couldn't tell me what they really are.
They are non-conceptual. There are two possibilities. They are conceptual or non-conceptual, and I'm saying they're non-conceptual.
Okay, great. Now we're making progress.
I said that an hour ago.
If they're non-conceptual, then I'm going to assume that what you're meaning is they're physical.
No. Non-conceptual does not mean physical. It means non-conceptual. It means that it's not conceptual. Whether or not it's physical or not is not the issue. You're making a fallacy. You're making a fallacy of exclusion. You're saying there's either physical or conceptual, and that's all there is.
That'd be a false dichotomy, not exclusion.
You are excluding other options. False dichotomy is a fallacy of exclusion.
I want you to tell me what they actually are.
I told you, they're non-conceptual.
What does that mean?
It means they're not concepts.
Okay, so logical absolutes are not concepts.
That's correct.
Okay, they're not concepts. Are they not anything else?
I have no idea.
Okay.
What does anything else mean?
So you know for a fact that these things are not concepts.
Do you know for a fact they're absolutes?
The statements are non-concepts. So A is equal to A. That's a non-concept.
A is equal to A.
Is a non-concept.
It is not a concept, but we can conceive of that. The statement is not the essence.
But it's not a concept, but we can conceive of it. Do you know of any place where A equals A exists outside of the mind?
It doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist?
That's
then
correct.
How come we're talking about it?
No. Now you've really changed scopes, because existence, I'm sorry if we're using a different word here, goes back to what is in reality. These things.
My thought of reality?
These things transcend reality. Reality is subject to them.
Do your thoughts exist?
My thoughts exist, yes.
Okay, then we have concepts that really exist.
Yes, we do.
So the statement.
But I said that they're not concepts.
A is a conceptual statement. It
yes.
exists.
Yes, the conceptual statement A equals A exists.
So that it exists in your mind?
The conceptual statement A equals A exists. The
Okay,
actual thing that statement points to is not a concept.
It is a truth statement, which is conceptual by nature, which probably reflects reality. You cannot give me the necessary preconditions for intelligibility. The only thing you can do is presuppose the validity of logic without it giving the necessary conditions for its existence. The very argument of Tag is this. They are conceptual by nature because they are of the mind. They only occur in minds. You don't find them under rocks. You can't freeze them. You can't take a picture of them.
They are
of
mutable.
The mind. If you say that they are not of the mind, then you have to tell me, what are they? Whatever your argument is, I don't care, Matt. Whatever you say, that's what it's not going to be. That's not helping the argument at all. I would want an atheist.
I'm not trying to help your argument. I'm trying to show you where you went wrong.
But with all respect, Matt, you're not. I mean, we both will not agree on this.
I identified a fallacy in there, and it's a fallacy of structure.
I've corrected many of the times you cited a fallacy being wrong, saying, no, that's not it, it's actually this one.
No, you have said it's not a fallacy, but you haven't actually corrected it. You've just said that it's not a fallacy. When what we're talking about here is, and you keep changing scope.
Woo.
There is in my mind a concept statement, A equals A. That concept statement is a concept in my mind. It points to something, just as a concept of an apple points to something. In the apple case, it points to something physical. In the concept A equals A, it points to something abstract.
Yeah. Did you invent the concept?
No.
It's not dependent upon you.
It's not. The concept itself, that concept statement, it is not dependent upon me, but the concept statement itself is contingent upon my existence and my ability to conceive it. Because if I'm not here, then my concept disappears.
So different minds can think these things up and bring them in or out of existence according to their creative ability?
No, they don't bring them in and out of existence. They bring the concepts in and out of existence. Whatever concepts you have in your mind, you have brought them into existence in your mind. Not in reality, not as a physical thing, in your mind.
Let me run with that. Let me run with that a little bit. You're an atheist who denies the existence of God, period, right?
Wow, where'd you get that from?
I'm going somewhere, but am I right? Let me ask you this.
I'll say you are, because at least for every practical definition of God that I've ever heard that's not, God is love or happiness or something where God is being a label stuck onto something else, or God is the logical absolutes. Yes, I don't believe in any of those other gods. I don't believe in those supernatural, transcendent thinking minds.
Okay, so you are a materialistic naturalist then?
Essentially.
Okay. That would mean then that, to burning this down really quickly, your mind, your brain, is the product of physical properties in the universe and biochemical reactions.
Yeah.
Okay? And they're limited to and governed by the physical properties of physical properties.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah.
That means that there is no such thing as logic.
No.
Let me finish. Logic is the process of proper inference. If biochemical reactions are all that you are thinking, then all that you can say is that what you perceive to be logically true and absolute and necessary is nothing more than the result of chemical reactions in your brain.
Agreed. Here's the problem.
That would not be logic.
Here's the problem.
Your system is self-refuting.
Here's the problem. You just said what you perceive, that perception is what exists. That concept...
in the mind.
Yes.
And only in the mind. You're talking about empiricism and epistemology here.
Yes, that concept exists in my mind.
In naturalism, logic doesn't have a place of its own transcendent existence in any way. There's nothing more than the properties of chemical reactions.
That's correct, because it's an abstract.
Then there is no
such thing as logic in your worldview. It is the essence of what it is. Here's what confuses me the most. How can guys like you not get this and refute it constantly and then turn around and make these exact same points about a God where you're taking the same characteristics and then extending it to also be a thinking, caring, loving mind?
Well, I'm going to answer that by asking you, how can a person as intelligent as you and as articulate as you not get it that the transcendent nature of rationality itself is dependent upon conceptual realities and absolute mind that authors them? Otherwise, you have no rationality to begin with.
Because they're not.
Because your answer, what you say, is not true. We both agree that logic exists independent of what you and I are, and even though
No, we don't, and that's the problem. We don't both agree that. No. Let me finish. We don't both agree that logic exists independent of us. We both agree that the absolutes upon which logic are based exist independent of us. Logic is purely conceptual and contingent upon a mind to use.
Let's go with that then. So then the conceptual absolute, these logical absolutes Do they depend upon our existence
No.
or their existence?
They don't depend on anything.
They're not existing?
In what sense? In the sense that they're a part of reality? No, reality depends upon them. They are true.
But you said they're non-physical, so what other options are there?
I don't know.
You
Abstract.
don't know? So
Abstract.
wait. You're telling me about what they are and aren't, and arguing against them, but you don't even know what they are.
Well, this is actually one of the things that I find most laughable about apologists, and I won't even ask for you to not take this personally. Once again, you get to this point where I don't know is such a bafflingly unacceptable answer to you. This is the colossal arrogance of the theist position, that they're unable to say, I don't know, maybe we'll find out someday. And instead of accepting an I don't know, they just go ahead and leap to the first thing that seems most reasonable to them.
If I were in a formal debate with you out there in Austin, Texas, and we're debating this issue, and you said, after I asked you, tell me what the nature and the essence of these things are, and you said, I just don't know. I'm going to come back again and say, in a formal debate where we're supposed to be using logic, you're telling me what logic is not, but you can't even tell me what it is, in any way, shape, or form.
No, that's not in any way, shape, or form. We're talking about within the context of what you're talking about. I already told you they're non-conceptual. Now, you want me to start going through all the other possibilities and eliminate those as well, and I can't do that, and neither can anybody else.
I'd like that.
Well,
I can do it for you.
I'd like
They're
you to prove
obviously
that
not
God
physical.
exists without a fallacy.
They're obviously not physical because we can't weigh them, see them, touch them, measure them.
You're asserting that something is either physical or conceptual, and that
You
there
have
are
another
no other
possibility.
options.
Let's go with another possibility. Do you have another, third option? Seriously, what else? In existence, some of these are physical, or I know that thoughts exist. My thoughts exist. I can't freeze them or weigh them.
But that's
so I know
existence.
there's a conceptual reality and there's a physical reality. What other reality have you got to offer?
Okay, how does God exist? Because that's existence within reality, and we're talking about something that we've already defined as transcending reality.
Okay, can you answer the question, though? Can you have a third option, either conceptual existence or physical existence? Is there a third option that you're aware of? I'm not aware of any other. Please correct me. Maybe I just don't know. I haven't read enough.
What I'm asking is about what you mean when you say exists, because when we talk about exists,
That which is.
we're talking about essentially within the bounds of reality, and that includes concepts.
There you go. Concepts and physical nature.
But that existence is subject to those absolutes, which is why we agreed in the first place that they are transcendent, that they are not contingent upon any matter, any space, or any time. The flaw here, one of the other flaws that I didn't quite get to address, is in the bigger scope of the argument, which is you're asking, why are the laws of absolute what they are? And why is a question regarding causality? And causality is necessarily temporal, and we have already excluded something because we're talking about something that transcends time. You're asking something that is essentially nonsense.
No.
Okay, well, that's the best answer I've ever heard.
If we only have two possibilities to account for something, I'm not saying there's only two in this situation. I'm saying if there is.
I agree.
If you only have two and one of them is negated, then the other one is validated automatically.
And prove to me that there are only two possibilities, because the only thing you've done so far is say, I only can think of two, can you think of others? You haven't proved that there are only two.
I don't know of any other, and I'm with you, you're being correct here, that haven't proven that you haven't proven that there's any other, but this is it. There is either the physical and non-physical, either conceptual or non-conceptual. You also are required to offer me a third option. If I say these are the two options, I'm not required to prove the exclusion of all others, because it'd be like you saying, don't ask me to prove God does not exist. I'm asking you to demonstrate what does exist, a third option. If you don't have a third option, then you cannot say that the logical absolutes are not conceptual. You could say they are, but you cannot logically hold to that position if you cannot give me rationally a third option.
No, I don't need a third option because I went with the second option. The option was they were either conceptual or not conceptual, and I'm going with not conceptual because conceptual makes them
physical.
Because because
what's the third option?
Conceptual makes them contingent upon thought. That's the problem.
What's the third option?
You're asking for what's the third option between two things that aren't two options of this, where there's a third or a fourth. It's like I'm saying they're either red or blue, and you're saying, okay, it's not red and it's not apple. So what is it? That's what you're doing.
Category mistake. Category mistake. I'm not doing that. If there are only two possibilities, give me a third possibility. In all seriousness, I'm not angry. I'm curious. Is there a third possibility? Conceptual reality or physical reality?
I don't accept your premise that the two possibilities, what I said was something is either conceptual or not conceptual. And you said that non-conceptual equates to physical. And I'm saying that this is one of those things, maybe the only thing, whatever, that is not conceptual. That is also not physical. It is.
You can't offer me a third option. Logic requires.
The third option is neither.
Neither?
It is neither conceptual nor physical.
So you jump into nothingness to defend your position?
No. I'm saying they are what they are. This is an essential. And now, Matt, after 45 minutes or so, I can't count the number of times I've repeated this. So we're going to stop because there are other callers. There are callers that are on hold, and I'll be more than happy to talk about this more in email, or you can call in another time. For those that are interested, you can go to carm.org. The website's actually listed up on the corner of your screen.
Call me up. Call my show.
Okay.
I have a radio show 5 days a week in the Boise area, streamed over the internet. We can talk about this. And if you come up with a third option, let me know. I'd love to hear it.
I'm not necessarily sure what the purpose of that would be because I identified a fallacy of structure in 6.1, and your only response is no, it's not.
No, that's not.
I'm sorry, it's not your only response. Your second response was you need to give me another option.
No,
I don't. No, I'm sorry. I'm putting your ass on hold now because I want to get this out and I want to move on. Thanks for the call, Matt, and we can talk about it another time. The nature of a syllogism is that you can know that it is unsound without necessarily knowing which premise is flawed or whether the structure is valid. And go look up reducto ad absurdum if you need to. I don't need to know what all the other options are to know that this option is not correct, to know that this is flawed, to know that there's an invalid structure in here. There's about 18 different spots where this particular argument was wrong, and I'll admit, I'm sure there are people out there who are face-palming and pounding their head against the wall, and I'm sure there are people who are screaming, no, Matt, you're wrong, and no, Matt, you're wrong. If you actually go to the site and read through the argument, and Russell and I looked this over during the week, this week, there are clear spots where the scope of what you're talking about changes. And I don't know another way to express this other than to say when we're talking about A, and then you talk about A1, and say that it's A, I can't get there.
I have a question.
Yeah, you haven't talked at all.
Well, no, I have a question about what you were just talking about. It seems to me that concept in my mind is based on experiential reality. Like my concepts can only come from my experiences with reality. Generally, I mean, there might be exceptions. I'm not averse to having exceptions, but in general, I conceive of things based on, what I know, what I've learned, how I interact with reality. And unless something's wrong with my brain, I conceive of things based on what I am. Like, this is soft, this is whatever. The apple is red. I mean, I conceive based on what I perceive and also how I think about it in a lot of ways, the way I was raised, or, So you make observations about things around you.
Yeah.
Now, I understand that the absolutes transcend my reality, my universe, or whatever. But at the same time, my experience with reality thus far is that it is an attribute of all things, that they are what they are and they're not what they're not. And if they're not anything, like the empty jar, like the non-existent die, are non-existent die, and they're not non-existent die.
Yeah, the thing what I'm saying, that's a bit of induction. But that's because I've seen this so many times, it seems to be like a good rule of thumb thing.
Now,
the thing about these laws being absolutes is that the laws themselves can be subject, like A equals A.
Right.
You can take A equals A equals A.
Right.
And I realize that's probably confusing somebody. What they mean is they apply to themselves.
Right.
They are what they are. They are tautologies. They are
Right.
necessarily themselves.
So to me, even though I can conceive of the concept A equals A, for myself as just the small human that I am, it is just simply based on everything I've ever seen that adheres to this.
Yeah.
And then the idea of saying it's transcendent would be, you know, I can't really think of any kind of universe or situation or time or anything that would impact where this wouldn't be true, or where this wouldn't be correct, or where this wouldn't be the case, or where this wouldn't be the nature of whatever is or isn't there. And so it seems to me that it is a concept that's based on an observation of simply saying everything I know works this way, and you know what? I can't even think of how it wouldn't work this way. So it is an operator that exists in the physical reality, but it also would exist even if there wasn't a physical reality, because it's just that kind of an operator that applies to absolutely anything, whether it is or isn't.
Yeah, it might be fair to say that that this law.
It's an observation on reality, or on any reality.
Yeah, but the problem with saying that, though, is that now you've tied it to an observation, that you've tied it to...
No, the observation is my conceptualization of what I'm
Yes.
experiencing,
And
but
the-
it's
and-
there. I
well,
mean, it's this.
This goes beyond what you're actually experiencing. But
Okay.
anyway,
Well, yeah, it does. But I'm just saying that the reason I would conceive of it is because everything I experience adheres to that. But everything
but
that I...
that's an induction, and that's not what this is.
The concept, though, is...
The concept is our...
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is the concept is based on what I mean, I get the concept from what I observe. But then what I can realize beyond that, what can I extrapolate beyond that, is that even things I couldn't observe, anything I could possibly make up, this would apply to.
Yeah.
And so
And it applies to itself.
I think that in our minds, the concept does derive from reality, from physical reality. But that doesn't mean that it wouldn't apply to any kind of abstraction. It could.
His question, though, was about the actual thing that we're talking about. It's not a thing.
It's an observation
Well, yes.
on something that is a quality of every single thing that is or isn't.
But it's... Yes, it is a quality.
Yeah. I mean...
I don't know. We got callers waiting, and I'm
Okay.
pretty sure that
right.
there's going to be mail that I just don't
All
even
right.
want to look at this week. But and we'll see. Maybe Matt will be back on the show at some point to talk about something else. Maybe he won't. Maybe that was more than enough for any of us. But we've got Amy in Panama. How you doing? Thanks for waiting.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, and you get to talk to Tracy.
Hi. Well,
What's it for you?
Oh, sorry. You had a question for me. Go ahead. I'm just kidding.
Well,